everyone.
Recorded. Welcome to Being Childless in the Workplace. We go workplace woke down under. It's really nice to have you joining us in this session at 6 o'clock on a Thursday night in Melbourne, for wherever you are. I know for some of you it's a bit earlier in the morning on the other side of the world. But Liz and I are very excited to be with you today.
Yes, thanks, Penny. Yes, I'm very excited to be here, and this is my first webinar I'm co-hosting for World Childless Week. So this is a big, come a long way from the first World Childless Week, where I was just reading submissions and going, "Wow, people are so brave." So I guess I must have become braver over the last 6 years.
Look at you now. We're going to I would like to start by doing an acknowledgement of country. And so I will do that. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. We acknowledge the stories, traditions, and living cultures of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples on this land and commit to building a brighter future together. I have in this moment lost my co-host, who I hope is working out on her technology. And the next part of this was that Liz was going to share our inclusive meeting statement. So I'll do that on her behalf while she's working out her technology and coming back to us. This inclusive meeting statement we wanted to include because of the fact that this is a childlessness in the workplace webinar. And it's something that we thought could potentially be useful for anyone in their workplace. And that statement for us before we begin today is: we begin this webinar mindful of the positive, safe, and supportive environment we seek to build across our childless community and encourage everyone to be part of an open, respectful exchange of ideas and value what is shared. There is, and I know that Liz has just messaged to say that she's got some internet issues, which is not surprising in the world that we live in. So I know she'll be incredibly frustrated trying to come back on, but I'll do an intro while we're waiting for Liz. For myself, so some of you may know me. I may be a new face for some of you. I stumbled across World Childless Week about 3 years ago. Was the first time that I participated and sent a submission in and nervously waited for it to come out. And World Childless Week for me has been pivotal in being able to gauge just how my progress has been over each consecutive year as I look back on things that I'd previously written and how I'm feeling in the here and now. But my experience really has been about I am single and childless, and that was where I really went through a lot of my disenfranchised grief in my 30s, and I have then in my 40s I did have was in a relationship, and I unfortunately had a miscarriage. And I went through those things in the workplace. You know, the workplace was where some of those things happened for me. So how I felt was quite different on both of those occasions. And I didn't understand what was happening to me with my disenfranchised grief in my 30s, whereas I very much understood what was happening. And so some of those things that we're going to talk about today are really important because we spend most of our time in the office and in the workplace. So what that environment is and how safe we feel there with what we are going through is so important to me that I am really looking forward to just going through and having this conversation with Liz today, who I'm so glad to see has reconnected with us. Liz, while you were gone, I did our Acknowledgement of Country, and I did the inclusive meeting piece, and you've perfectly timed yourself. I'm so glad that I've done, let everyone know who I am and why I'm excited to be a part of this session today. So I'll let you take the floor on your return, Liz.
Thank you for taking the lead, Penny, and carrying on while I was obviously disconnected or something. So yes, Liz Campbell. I am also in Melbourne, Australia, and Penny and I have gotten to know each other over the last 2 years now, or maybe a year and a half. I've lost track. I think we made plans we booked tickets to see Hamilton together about 6 months before we even could meet in person. So that's the power of this community. You can just make plans with people, because that's what you can do when you don't have little people to worry about. So who am I? I have a blog that I started 3 years ago called Redefining My Plan A. And that was something that came about when I was trying to find my way forward after finishing my IVF journey. I finished my IVF journey in late 2015. And for 2 or 3 years, just sat around in a bit of a blur, just wondering where I fit in, who I could connect with. Everyone I knew had, who had even tried IVF had found success. And I was sitting there going, feel like a bit of a loser here, but, sitting here in the corner, and no one I know is in my situation. And then I learned about the first World Childless Week in 2017, and that quite literally changed my life, because I got to connect with so many amazing people right across the world, here in Australia, here in Melbourne. Many of us are, for myself, I guess I started off my journey in life as a childless by circumstances person, or I think was the term BB used the other day, of social infertility. Just wasn't able to find the right person, or at least not the right person for me. And then by the time I did find someone, I was 40, 41, and IVF was just did the worst things to my mind and body. And one of the reasons I was really keen to be a part of this webinar when Penny and I were talking about the topics is because what I went through in the workplace while going through IVF, surviving a miscarriage, and I use that word surviving in inverted commas, and moving forward in life, and now find myself going, how do I talk about who I am now, and really want to change that conversation around how people who don't have children, especially if you're childless not by choice, what's a safe place for us, what's a safe space for us in the workplace. So, and this picture of me with my 2 fur babies, Chewy and Lucy. So they are my personal therapy dogs. They don't know it, but they saved me on more than enough occasions from dark places in my life. Thank you.
I reckon they do know, actually. I think they take their job very responsibly as well, Liz. They're very dedicated to you.
All righty. And on that note, over to you, Penny.
So as Liz was saying, we were talking about how being in the workplace is so important to both of us, and the experiences that we've both had while we've been in it. And as I was mulling this over, and the approach that we would take to it, and the different stages of that, I really made me feel like one of the terms that's been used quite a lot in the last year or two has been woke. Everyone's woke to what's happening, and I think Liz has added in the definition there of knowledgeable about your community and the world with the willingness to access and critique systems of oppression. Do we feel that we are being treated woke in this society right now? I don't think so. I don't think that we've got an incredibly knowledgeable community within our workplace. I think we're getting better at it in our social context, and that's different for everyone. And that's not on a linear scale at all. But in the workplace, I wouldn't say necessarily that. And if you do feel like you can say yes to that, share it with us, tell us where you work, because I think we all want to know where a woke workplace is that you feel completely safe about being able to talk childless or any experiences that you're going through related to that. So for me, being woke, and I'm kind of doing a bit of a shake like I'm some sort of, 20s, 30s rock star when I'm not, but I have got the sparkles on tonight just to kind of feed into that feeling. It's about our work environments becoming woke, and I want to feel like when we get to a blue skies, the best scenario of what a workplace should look like, that we can say, yeah, company I work for is pretty damn woke on how they view and look at childless people in the workplace. They're down with it. So what we're going to do today is just talk about what it is that happens in our workplace, how we should respond. And I am leaping ahead, and I shouldn't do that, Liz. We want some things to change. So that's what the wokeness is about, and why we want to address that. So woke, make that your reference point. Is your company woke enough? Tell us in the chat. Thank you. Thanks, Liz.
So here's what we're going to talk about today. So what are the issues we face, whether you faced them in the past, as when you were during your childless, I guess maybe infertility journey, what are the issues you might be facing now? How should it look? What is a woke place, a place that's woke to people like us, look like? And how can we respond when in the moment when someone asks us something inappropriate, or says, oh, you could have just adopted, those silly things people say to childless people. And then towards the end, we'll talk about some suggestions for what can be changed. So what we can do at a micro level and a macro level. Alrighty, keep on losing my mouse. Here we go. Okay.
So what are the issues? And I think this is commonplace. Like a lot of us will feel you'll already have something at the tip of your tongue, like what the things that you faced in the workplace. And Liz and I did a bit of a download of the things that we found were issues in the workplace, and it didn't take us very long to come up with a plethora of things, which I think I'll let Liz kick off on this topic. And one of the first things, right, that comes up.
So I know for myself is, I mentioned before, having done IVF, doing infertility treatments when you work full-time or even nothing part-time, dealing with managers. How much do you tell your manager, I'm going through infertility because I'm going to be coming in a bit late because I've got to do a blood test, or I've got to leave in the afternoon, or leave in the middle of the day, or I've got some bad news, sorry, I can't come in. And people sort of, start to notice. They certainly did for me when I was not, coming in a bit late, and they're going, oh, okay, or she's leaving a bit early. And people just, make observations and say, is everything okay? Or when we were in the middle of one of the types of infertility rounds where I was on some kind of steroid treatment where I had to eat 4 times a day because the medication required me to have food with, and people going, oh, gee, she's eating a lot, and going, oh, eating again. And that's not even thinking about all of those emotions that are swirling around your body with all of those insane infertility drugs that they pump into you mentally and physically. I feel like I turned into a bit of a werewolf at times, because I just knew with some of the drugs I was on, I was like, I'm not me, I'm not a human. And to hold all of that in while in the workplace, I remember having a conversation, I think not long after we had a miscarriage, where one particular colleague was just going on and on and on about her 4 kids and how hard it was. And so I actually got to the point where I said, can we catch up for a coffee? Went out for a coffee, and I said, look, I just want to let you know that you going on about your 4 children that you chose to have, I can't even have one. I can't even have one. So, just could just be a little bit more aware. And she was immediately quite, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And I shouldn't have to tell her that, I had a miscarriage or that I'm going through infertility, but the fact that people, the pronatalist view of, oh, I've just got to complain about my children, and oh, I've got to do this for my children, completely unaware that not everybody's in the same situation. So, and said all the unhelpful, I know someone who tried it, or they stopped trying, or they took a break, or they whatever. And those unhelpful anecdotes. So that's certainly my experience of, being the childless in the workplace.
I want to call that out, Liz, that was a really brave thing to do. It's not, I just want to acknowledge it's not everyone who has the ability to do that. So, I first of all give you kudos for being able to have the strength of mind to take that person aside, because in so many ways we could be very, internal about that. It upsets us, but what you did was you directly addressed it. I think it's terrific. I think that the next part of that is, and we'll get to, that not everyone has the capacity to do that. So that is, remarkable and fantastic results too, right?
So thank you. So Penny?
I'm going to pick up this one about the people sharing baby announcements. I recall this specifically after I'd had my miscarriage and I was in the workplace, and someone that I was working with had previous to me had also had a miscarriage, and his partner had and he talked quite openly about it with the leadership, just one-on-one. So I was aware of that, and that made me feel very comfortable to be able to go to him. And then they went on to have their first child, and someone else within the group coming on to a Teams meeting actually had that. When I came on to join the meeting, there's a photo of the newborn, and I was shocked, and it was upsetting. And I thought, what on earth has this got to do? I'm coming in here for a professional meeting and an update on something, and I have this totally blindsided, and it really did blindside me from what I was, meant to be there for. And I cannot even to this point remember if I had to remove myself and go and do something else until things had started to progress. But without that warning of there will be an announcement made or anything, so that that's what happens in our workplace. People don't understand that those sorts of things are not appropriate for everyone. Same thing with baby gifts and cards doing the rounds, and this one comes up often, I find, for the single and childless too, that there's a celebration for everything in the pronatalist world of you go through all of those stages, and here we are in the workplace, the one place that you go to that is yours, like you get to do your thing, and that's where you go to earn your money, and so you can go off and do the other stuff that you really love. And here you are being asked for money to contribute towards baby gifts and cards, or baby showers, and all sorts of things. I don't necessarily think it's the most appropriate thing. If I personally want to do that for someone, I can do that, but I find it really confronting in the workplace that is being asked of me. So yeah, they're tough ones, they're tough situations to be in, and not necessarily fair for those of us who don't have children and are in tender places about how we feel about not having a child, and someone else being able to celebrate that. It's such a I think tender is the right word, a space to be in where you feel that by not celebrating, it's on you, the onus is on you, that you're holding back on celebrating for them, but it's not really about them. It's the fact that it is something that is tough for us. So it's a situation that we shouldn't have to feel that we're being placed in.
Absolutely, yeah. Penny. And one of the things that I definitely don't miss about not being in the office is, or being in the office is, there's the cards that come around. Oh, they're having a baby, a third. Yeah, do we need to buy her a gift again? So I've definitely not missed in the last 2.5 years those emails and, let's have a little celebration for someone going off to have a child. And, definitely not missing that in the last 2.5 years. So probably another issue that some of you might have faced is, picking up the workload for parents leaving early or who have unwell kids. And that I know is something that I have faced, for a number of years when I have staff or colleagues who have, I've got to do school pickup, or I'm going to be late because I'm doing school drop off, and so can't have a meeting before a certain time, can't have a meeting until after a certain time. Or when there's something to be done, like a deadline, and, I've got to take my child to basketball or soccer or something else, or my child's, unwell, and sorry, I'll be offline for 3 days. And you go, okay, don't worry, I'll tell the board we won't get that report done, or I'll do it myself. So this is something I've definitely experienced on a number of occasions, and I'm probably thinking that I'm not alone here. And the other one is about, that acceptability that, it's a curriculum day, and that's what we call them here in Australia. It's teachers are at school, but the kids don't go to school. And it's perfectly acceptable to bring your child into work. And there are usually annoying or running around, but we can't bring our pets. And I'm like, my pets would be way better. My dogs would be way better behaved than some of the children I've seen.
It's so true. And that whole place about workplaces being this comments around the parent-centric one, and that when we first went into COVID, I know a lot of people will experience this, that the focus was on families and how they were coping in the COVID environment. And it wasn't until kind of we pushed into a bit further that there was any talk about those who are single and don't have kids and are potentially home alone, that the focus kind of went that way. But generally, our especially down under, our governments were talking about very family focused and kept to that. How do we look after the families? I keep hearing families. I'm like, what about those of us who don't have any support at all and are on our own? And who do we reach out to, and who are our support networks that we have? So yeah, it's a tough one in the workplace, and the support being for during the pandemics, even in the sympathy for other workmates that, they've got children and they're having to deal with, balancing the act. Well, there's a lot to be said for the stress of not having someone during a pandemic. You've got the stress and you've got no one to be able to share that with, or no one to outside of the workplace to go and talk to. So the workplace is common during the week at least, or depending on if you had a bubble buddy. That's what we did here. I'm not sure how common that is around the rest of the globe. You can tell us in the chat. But we had a bubble buddy, and we also had a restriction of 5K here, which was, for a lot of our lockdown, there was a 5K restriction, which didn't even allow me to go to my favorite supermarket, So that was my big joy. And it sounds crazy now, but my big joy was when I got to go to 10K radius and I got to go to my favorite supermarket, because those small joys, I didn't have, anyone else in the house to share those things with. And that's where those conversations in the office, when it was all focused on families, become so much more poignant, of so little understanding for a whole other part of subgroup of the workforce that are going through something completely unrecognized, and placing so much attention on those who do have kids. So
absolutely. Yeah, this every conversation, every team meeting was, now if you're having trouble balancing, work, as a parent, then you just work whatever hours you can, but there was never any reduction in the workload. You just assumed that someone else, oh, that's right, us, would be taking care of that. So that's the other thing that always irked me, like, who's doing the work if these parents are only working half a day?
Yeah, that's right.
So, and I'm sure the example the blurb I've got there on the bottom right-hand corner is one that many of us can relate to, that as a mother, or you wouldn't understand stress because you're not a parent, or you don't know what tired is. Just a few months ago, I was so I work in project management, and there was a new project manager who joined my organisation, and we were talking about what it feels like to have COVID, to actually be sick from COVID. And she goes, oh well, there's parent tired or there's mum tired, and I just had to really control myself by saying, oh, sorry, is there something special about being a mum? So I just said, well, I don't know what mum tired is, but I do know what tired is, because I work really long days and I've only got a team of 2 people and we've got a workload. So, maybe tired isn't limited to being a mother. So I just kind of left it there. But, just that those comments of, as a mother, or I don't know, if there's men on the, on the chat tonight, do men say that to other men? As a father, to someone who's childless, do you understand what it's like? I find it's always the women who are saying, as a mother, as a mum tired. No one says dad tired. Is that because the dads don't get tired? I don't know.
That's a good point, actually, Liz. I don't know if they phrase it like that, though. I think they can put it in another way, that they infer that they have kids, and that kind of gives them some gravitas just by they're a parent, but they don't qualify their statements with it, which I think is what the females who are mothers are saying by as a mother. It really is a qualifying statement that this should have some extra emphasis because of that fact, when it shouldn't make any difference.
So
so that point about kids and the bringing their kids into the workplace, it is so true. And I think we'll talk about the occasions and family days and stuff, but I've had that on occasion where people will bring their children into the workplace. Prams will come in and there'll be a child and a baby, a newborn, and in my, more so actually in my 30s, when I was going through what I hadn't realized was this disenfranchised grief, I really struggled with it, actually, because I just didn't want to acknowledge it. It just didn't feel fair to me that here was someone bringing and making this like it was a sharing, rather than taking it outside and people could go and have coffee with them. They were coming right into the office, and here in your professional workplace, I know it's a great breakdown. There's a part of me that if I was being woke for everyone, I would say that that's great. But if you're going through a grief, that's a really tough one to have to go through, and have the sound of a child while you're trying to do your professional workplace work. We've made a comment here about not having pets in the office, and how cool is it where someone's got to know someone. I know someone who has been able to take their dogs into work. I think it's the coolest thing, because everybody, I can't say that actually, there will be people who don't like dogs, but so many people get benefit from dogs. And dogs are Liz, I don't know, you should really talk to this, because Liz has got in her workplace, they actually have dogs that are for support dogs that help with the paramedics. So they've got something and a dog to help, calm them. And Liz could definitely talk better to that. But I think that it's great that we have workplaces that do that, because it really, the serotonin from having animals and pets around that you can you know, they're such affectionate creatures that give and take so little, except for food. Mine insists on being fed twice a day and tells me about it. And I'm really glad that we haven't heard from her tonight, because normally she's making lots of noise in the background. But Liz, I really want you to share about your the dogs with
absolutely,
Victoria, because I think that's so cool.
Yeah, so I work for Ambulance Victoria, and that's our, I guess, a state ambulance service. And there are 17, we have a proper program, a peer dog support program, where we have 17 dogs at the moment, and that's right across the state. And the purpose behind the program was we have a peer support program where there are people trained to, after someone's been through a trauma, so a paramedic who perhaps has attended a car accident, and perhaps had to attend to someone who is maybe have died at the scene, etc., or some other, traumatic experience on a call. And we have this service that they can call up and say, listen, I need, go to a particular place or station, or they can come to the place. And they have everything from Bernese Mountain Dogs to Golden Retrievers, Australian Sheepdogs, Labradors. I think the first dog in the program, his name's Bruce, and he's 10 years old, and I got to meet him last December. And the guy who's his handler said how there were grown men who were just, kind of in a bit of a state after a particular trauma they'd been through. These are paramedics, and they've just brought Bruce into the room, and here's a grown man just, kind of tears streaming down, and the dog's just sitting there, just, don't worry, I'll be there for you. So it's a fantastic program that we have, and I'm really proud to be part of an organization that has dogs as well as people to provide that kind of peer support. So it's a very fantastic program.
I'll let you kick off the next one, Liz.
Yes. So I'm just conscious of time, Penny, because it is 6:38 and we've got a few more slides. So I guess I might maybe leave this slide for now and kick on. Or do you want me to cover off?
I want to add in one other thing, because I think it's really important, and I think people who've got other roles and caring for elderly parents, or someone else that they are responsible for, maybe another relative, a family member, a sibling. These are often the roles that are picked up by people who don't have children. It's commonly, it's written, we know that it's fact from the papers that have been done and research that's been done, that this isn't just about folk who've got children that need that focus is done about who needs extra support. It is for those who don't have children. It should be everyone, but there is this really missed group of people who are not thought about in policy, who are looking after elderly parents and need to use their leave for being able to care and leave early and do things, just as someone with children is very acceptable in the workplace for the most part. And I know we've moved on leaps and bounds in the last 20 years, that, someone with kids would have felt very ostracized for leaving early. Now we have the same issue with those who don't have children, and everyone should have legitimate reason without explaining if they need to leave early for something, if there are arrangements in place. But I really think there's something that's missing for those who've got caring roles, and that's predominantly falls to those who are without children. So I just wanted to call that one out. But you're right, Liz, we should keep moving.
All righty. So how should it look? How should being childless in the workplace look? How can we make it work? No one should come to work and be made to feel uncomfortable. So we found these two images, and we're going to speak to each of them. Penny, you want to go first with the image on the left?
Yeah, we had some fun, and we really thought that these spoke to, how it's so good to have a visual representation to explain. And you might have seen these go around on Facebook or on social media, but this one for equality, equity, reality, and liberation for me really spoke to how we think about the workplace, and that not everyone is the same. So this equality, thinking that we're an equality workplace, is not really true, because you're looking after one and you're not really looking after the rest, which is exactly what we face in the workplace today. Equity is about moving things around so that we've got extra support for those people. So that's, you know, an ideal situation where we can provide additional support so that the little ones can be lifted up and we can all get the same advantage of seeing something. And that's what we're asking for. We're asking for some equity in what our workplaces look like. The reality is that those who've got the loudest voice and the majority party, which in this case are those generally with children, get extra advantages given to them, and workplace policies that are put in place. And while that's happening, we're taking on more shifts and we're falling further down into that pit that you know, that little one's falling into, because we're scrambling to do the rest of the work that is the rest of them are being well supported. Perfect scenario is that we don't have any of those. The liberation is that it's open for all of us. You know, everything is fair and we're all looked after equally. So equity we aspire to, but liberation is our blue sky. Wouldn't that be amazing? But I'm happy to aspire for equity right now, that we have recognition and we're propped up to. That's how
Absolutely.
I saw that one.
Yeah, that's, I think.
Surprise, Liz went with the shoes. Because I know Liz, she loves rocking a great pair of shoes, so it's so appropriate she's taken the shoe one. Over to you.
Stole my opening line there. Yes, I do love shoes. I do love shoes. I think the only pair I don't have there is Crocs, and I'm okay with that. So yeah, again, in the same, you know, the definitions, I suppose, of what equality is just, you know, like the picture on the left, everyone getting a pair of shoes. Diversity is just everyone getting a different type of shoe. So you go, oh yes, I've recognized the childless, the LGBTQI. I've covered all the boxes. Everyone's covered. And equity is everyone getting that pair of shoes that fits. Now I don't know about you, but I often have trouble finding shoes that fit me properly. I'm size 10, I think, in Australia, which I'm pretty sure is not similar in the US. And getting a pair of shoe that fits is really hard. Acceptance. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if we work in a workplace or in society in general where people understand that we're different, but it's perfectly okay to be different, and that just because we don't have children doesn't mean that we don't get to be accepted. And of course, ideally, much like the liberation image, is belonging, wearing the shoes that we want. So that's the blue sky, you know, part of the end of the rainbow, is being able to wear the shoes you want without fear of judgment. And I just realized I judged for not having Crocs. But the fact is that in the workplace, being able to just be yourself, and, you know, I know that, I mean, now that I'm 50, I feel like I've gotten a new wave of confidence that I certainly didn't have, you know, 5 years ago, like 10 years ago, but that I don't have the fear of saying, yes, I'm childless, not by choice, or that I'm a woman of color, and in case you can't tell, you know, I'm different to you. So that belonging is wearing the shoes you want without fear of judgment. And that would be just wonderful, that when we say to someone, we don't have kids, we don't get that, oh, sorry, you didn't try, or you didn't want them badly enough. No judgment, just, oh, thank you for sharing. That should be it.
And creating that space. What I think would be lovely is to be able to say that, creating a space if you wanted to follow it up with something, or if you comfortably wanted to change it to another topic, that's okay too. Yeah. I don't know. I won't say anything about the Crocs. How can we respond? So this leads into really our next bit, but it's how do we as individuals, and I said this earlier when I was talking about, Liz made the reference, she took a colleague aside and had a coffee with them to explain how do we do that? How do we deal with when all of those things, there's so many situations that come up in the workplace that when we're in the depths of grief and dealing with things that are going on outside, how do we respond, and what tools can we have that we can revert to use and think about. So the next slide is going to go into that, and how do we educate people? Can we plan ahead for it? And how do we change the narrative in the workplace that this is part of the norm, that we should be thinking about these things?
And I know, Penny, I did give the example of where I took that colleague aside. What I didn't tell you, the other side of the equation was not long after I miscarried, there was someone returning to work, after mat leave or something, and we're having a lunch. And while I had one positive example of I got courage to speak up, this person returning from mat leave, someone else in the team has gone, "Oh, have you invited Kelly?" And I must have just really only been days after returning to work. And I went, "Well, I don't know. Does Kelly check her emails? Not really my problem." And that poor woman was like, "Oh, okay." I just asked about the lunch, and I was like, "You know what? She's on mat leave. She can check her email." So, I've had both ends of good and bad, crazy and not so crazy.
Yeah.
So, what can we change in the workplace? So this slide, that when Penny and I were putting it together, we looked at it as a micro, perhaps as an individual, what we can do. What are macro things that that can be done, perhaps at an organizational level? Are we in a place? Are we ready to, I guess, that macro level, be woke and say, "Hey, workplace, this is something you need to be aware of." And I guess in the middle of any good Venn diagram is, how can we be acknowledged or be more visible? So Penny, I think you were going to talk to the micros.
Yeah, so I'll talk to the individual piece and how we get our voice. And that's, the letting people know. So feeling safe to share that. And that's feeling empowered that we can talk to these things. And I know I saw in the chat that it's really not easy, and we want people and workplaces to be aware of that. But I think if we feel comfortable enough that it's okay, it's our, it's okay to be able to talk about this, and that as human beings, we have a right to be able to let people know what does and doesn't feel great, makes us feel uncomfortable, or where we do feel comfortable. So I think that's really important. Approaching HR, this one's about writing a letter or reaching out to HR to let them know what is available that I can tap into as far as training or awareness of how to look after and care for people in the workplace who are without children. So that, are there policies in place? Is there anything that I can be aware of? Is there support? Are there things that I know that my manager is having training to make them also aware of this as a situation? By doing that, it places some onus back onto the company for them to think about. But as an individual, you have every right and should feel empowered to be able to do something like that. If you're a leader within a team and you're organizing events, or you're just an individual when something's being created, to ask that. There isn't always the family barbecue, the Christmas gatherings, and it's a big thing down under to have the Christmas barbecues and the hit of cricket. I had this at a workplace only, before lockdowns, 3 or 4 years ago, where they did this. And I know that we were in an IT space and it is predominantly males, but it doesn't make any difference. It shouldn't, because there are still men who are in the same situation of not having, children to bring along. And it feels very, we should have alternates, make those suggestions, talk about what there can be that you can do. And it's not necessarily about bringing family into it. It's even to the point of, bringing partners, because those who don't have partners, does that then make them uncomfortable? The old double whammy. I haven't got kids to bring along, I don't have a partner, really think about those. That in a workplace, what we want to focus on is the individuals who you're spending your time with during that year. It's great to get to know others, families and externals, but that's something that we should think about as doing privately. It's not necessarily on the work front, and that we as individuals can also choose not to attend those baby related celebrations when there's a baby shower. That it's okay if you would rather take time and go and have lunch or go for a walk at that time, and not have to feel like you've gone into that event and then end up extracting yourself to go to the bathroom because you feel so overwhelmed by it. That it's actually literally okay to say no and give yourself something else to do during that time, that you don't have to go through that. That's what we feel, that's what we as a group should feel empowered to be able to do and make those choices, so to make our experience better in the workplace, that we have some control over. The macro points that Liz will go through are what we would like to see changed in policy from a much bigger level. But between the micro and the macro, this is all about feeling like we've been acknowledged and we're visible, that our workplaces are woke to how we feel, and that we can feel comfortable to do these micro things. So there is an element that we need to step up and feel comfortable. But I think that if we're having some of these conversations with a colleague or a manager, that also gives us some empowerment, that you've got someone on your side, when you don't have to have someone talking about you not being somewhere because someone can go, oh no, they had something else that was important at this time to go to, that there was an understanding. So as hard as it can be in those moments, we need our support and our tribe around us to talk on our behalf as well, to change some of these things on the macro to help us on the micro. So I'll stop talking about the micro so I can let Liz talk on those bigger things that we need to change.
Thanks, Penny. There's networks, the tribe, so I know at my workplace, there's maybe a couple of people that I know might be childless not by choice, or, don't have children, but it's really hard to find where those people are without putting myself out there. So in the same way that a lot of workplaces are, they'd have something for people on the Pride network, so LGBTQI, or someone who are, people are Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, or culturally and linguistically diverse. Like, where's a space for us as childless people to be, finding support with each other, from each other. And certainly today, I decided to bite the bullet and talk to someone in our one of our diversity and equality division, and say, I'm doing this webinar tonight about childless in the workplace. And because she herself identifies not as a cisgender person, so she was like, this is great. Oh, tell me when it is. I said, oh, look, I know it's short notice. She goes, well, it's being recorded. I'll definitely check it out. It's so important. Every voice needs to be heard. And I was like, right, you're on my list of people.
Oh.
So it was really empowering to just have that moment where you can speak to someone who isn't, I didn't know whether she had children or not, but I thought, well, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing, in my spare time. And the fact that she immediately said, what a fantastic topic. This is so important. And, I was like, okay, all right, just a little bit of courage there. That thing about leadership and manager training, if I think about my own experience in the managers I had while I was going through IVF, let alone, after a miscarriage, etc., there was one manager who had been through a miscarriage, but she had eventually had success to have a child. She, I thought, would be more of someone who would understand, what I was going through. And she sort of did, but she wasn't a particularly warm person to start off with. And I think that in the same way we teach, we try to educate our leaders and managers to be more aware of diversity and how to speak appropriately to staff and give constructive feedback. This is just another module of, did you know there are not everyone in your team will have experienced the joys of becoming a parent, and that, it just becomes another module of awareness, really, for our leaders and managers. And of course, as Penny's alluded to, the definition of carers leave. So carers leave at the moment, depending on what your enterprise agreement is at workplace, will have different definitions of a parent, an immediate, you're a child or immediate family member, or immediate, I think, someone in your household. And a carer's leave can only be applied, I think, for people who live in your household or something like that. So that definition of carer's leave really needs to be reviewed in the lens of, well, what happens if you don't have a child and you are single and you want someone to come care for you, you're caring for someone else. So these are things that like Penny and I, when we were talking, we feel could really change how we are seen and acknowledged. And I haven't looked at the chat, but it's up to 56 comments. So this is fantastic to see. I haven't had a chance to see the comments yet. But these are things that we think can be changed in the workplace. And we'd love to hear from what you have, any ideas or experiences or something you've tried in your workplace. Wrap up. You're on mute, Pen.
I apologise. I'm muted because Livy wants to be part of the webinar tonight. Livy is my Beagle Cross Border Collie, who is my support dog through COVID, and loves to chat. We love to chat to each other. That's what's happened over COVID. Wrap up, sorry. Have you faced these? And I know there's been lots of stuff going on in the chat, and I've really enjoyed watching the chat that you've all been having amongst each other, which is fabulous. What has worked for you? Like in the workplace, I can see that there's been some really difficult situations that people are being faced with, but what has worked for you? And does your workplace have policies in place or an outlet to identify comfortably that you may feel uncomfortable about some of this discussion or things that are happening within around people bringing their babies in or leaving early or workloads not being fairly distributed? Please pop things in the chat because we're coming to the end of our slides and the session that we've put together. We'd love to be able to share with you and talk to some of the questions that you've got, because this is something that is so different across so many different workplaces, the things that we face. I'm new to the public sector. I've been in big companies for most of my career, which is quite different to those who've potentially been in smaller places where you might have more say or less say on what's going on. Big companies are definitely harder ones to change the ship on how your policies that are being changed, and generally you're talking about how you interact with the closer team or network that you're dealing with. But yeah, I'm just keeping an eye on the chat while I'm blabbing away here. If there is public sector unwoke, where are you, Melanie? Are you down under? Because I think that public sector, I'd love to think I moved into public sector I'm a year, my 1 year anniversary has just gone over. And I really did move into public sector because I thought that I wanted to make more of a difference and impact. And I felt that public sector would be more woke. And it's really interesting that there's a lot of talk that happens within public sector compared to, there's a lot more softer and training that happens, but not necessarily around those who don't have children. That's kind of a blank spot as far as their awareness and what they do.
Yeah, I've been in the public sector.
Oh, you are down under, Melanie. Yeah, that's interesting. It's nice to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've been in the Victorian public sector for 18 years, just last month actually, and I've seen the whole gamut of a time where there was no recognition even for being someone who was a non-white person. So, I'm now part of a Women of Colour network across the public service. So that in itself, over 3 or 4 years is already a huge leap. And now I think, oh, well, imagine if we could have a VPS Childless Not by Choice network. Wouldn't that be amazing? Who knows?
Well, isn't that something we could start, Liz?
Maybe we could.
As we're saying that and we're talking in a webinar about these things, maybe we should be doing that. Something for us to think about after this.
Absolutely.
Someone else had put something in I was going to talk about. Something, Nicola, really good point. Nicola Rumble, thank you, about if one person stands up, sometimes that creates a wave of people who then feel empowered to speak up and say, because one person has, well, actually that impacts me too, and I'm going to stand up with you. And you'll be amazed at that. There's stuff written about that, that tipping point of one person, that brave person getting up and saying something, and the bravest person is what they say is the second person who supports them, and then that creates the wave. So if you see someone doing something, be that brave person who supports them to create that wave. It's such a good point, Nicola. I totally agree. And I do. I can have a chat and say and speak up, but I do really want to look out for those in my workplace who don't, and I want to help them. So it's a really good point. Be the brave second person.
Okay. I might just stop sharing the screen. So many amazing comments and just really touched by the interaction, because I still can't believe I did a webinar. Penny, you're too persuasive for your own good.
Congratulations, Liz. Way to go. Look at you. Look at how far. And you've been on this journey and part of World Childless Week longer than I have, actually. I probably dipped my toes in when I got involved in that podcast, and realized how good it was to talk about this stuff, and felt quite empowered myself in being able to talk. But I know that I would like to be able to talk much more in the workplace, particularly. It's one thing to talk amongst my people, you being my tribe, Liz, you being, tucked under my, walking arm in arm as a buddy on this stuff. But it's another talking to an audience that is not so aware and of what the feelings are that you've experienced or that you're going through. Yeah. So, like I say, kudos to everyone who's been able to.
Nicola, I've just seen your comment about writing a blog about your hysterectomy and surgical menopause. That is such incredible courage. I'd absolutely take my hats off to you, because, writing about something that is quite a major surgery, and that people were having great interactions with you, just shows that, when you do have a little bit of vulnerability, that for the most part, you'll have people who just go, you are so brave. So I just want to say how brave you are for writing about that. I mean, I joke about being in menopause now as people say, oh yeah, it's need to bring a jumper or a sweater, and I go, that's okay, I've got menopause, I've got that covered. So yeah, just kudos to you, Nicola. Nicola, are you in Australia or are you overseas? Where is Nicola?
I'm recognising a few faces.
30 and menopausal, 38.
UK. She's in the UK. There you go.
Okay.
38 and menopausal. Nicola. Whew, I've got to fan myself on that one. Thank you so much. I really appreciate, Steph, I really appreciate the opportunity that you've given to both Liz and I to come in today and talk about this topic, and be able to share with such a fabulous group who are with us right now. And for those that get to listen in the future, thank you for dropping in and listening to what we have to say. Love to hear more on what you do in the workplace. Share it on the World Childless Week, or reach out to Liz and I think our details are shared as part of the webinar, how you can reach us in the different groups that we're part of. Let us know. I think that Liz and I might have just put an idea, catalysed something as far as what we might take away. So perhaps next year, I'm saying it now, we can come back and talk about something that we've actually put into play in the workplace. Yeah. But yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity, Steph, and thank everyone for their participation in the chat.
Yes, thank you everyone, and hopefully when my thing crashed earlier, you didn't hear me scream all the swear words I could think of. So hopefully it dropped off before then.
You were fine. I was doing the duck paddle under the water while it was, I hope, was maintaining that smoothly on the top. But I'll step when you're ready, you can come back in and relieve us of otherwise I'm gonna sit here and keep chatting and talking to everyone in the chat. I'm quite happy to do that.